Okay, here we go. All right, hello everybody. I'm here today for a Nerd Talk with Lorna Botwright, and we're going to have a conversation between us foot nerds. But before we get started, we want to just give you a little bit of information about what the Foot Nerd program is. So the Foot Nerd program is a year-long health journey for individuals from all over the world, from all professions and all walks of life that want to embody health. And we embody health by studying 5 pillars of health. We study sleep, food, movement, mindfulness, and community. And at the end of this year-long journey, what comes out of this is the possibility for us to guide other people on their health journey as well. Because we believe that in the Foot Nerd program, what we really believe is that we can only help people with their health so far as we have personally gone in our health. So the Foot Nerd program is first a program to embody our own health, to get our own health under control, and to be as vital as we can be in our own lives. And then from there, if we're able to inspire other people to do the same, that's what we do. So Lorna Botwright, am I saying that right, Lorna?
Yeah, it's Botwright, yeah.
Botwright. She has the best accent on the planet, and we are fellow foot nerds, and we're going to talk today about the pillar of mindfulness. We kind of have an idea of where we're going with it, but I'm going to turn it over to her to introduce herself. She is a sports therapist in the UK. She's also a netball player. She's a foot nerd, and she's one of my favorite humans that I know.
Much love back.
Yes, and I have never even met her. So, Lorna, why don't you start by telling us a little bit about how you found your way to the Foot Nerd program and what it is that you get out of it, and where you might be headed with it in the future.
So I found the Foot Nerd program through Instagram, through the Foot Collective on Instagram. I've tried for a while now to use social media as a really effective tool for my business, for the sports therapy practice, following people who have the kind of values that I like us to embody at my clinic and that I have as personal values. And I'm really mindful that if I am using social media, I want to use it effectively to help to engage with life, not just to scroll through. And so the Foot Collective was a page I started following, and I really enjoy reading the different snippets that came up on there, information about how to help yourself be healthy and how to help yourself grow in health. And I found the Foot Nerd program through that. And what I really liked about it was like these 5 pillars. Like here in the UK, we're trained quite aggressively to, in like most degrees of health, to keep it quite boxed, I would call it. So we tend to like to put things into boxes and follow them quite rigidly, which I've always had a real struggle with. You know, even in the basic lines of when I was training, someone would say, oh, if you've got an Achilles tendinopathy, it will feel like this, it will look like this, it will respond like this, and you will fix it like this. But actually, once I left uni, and we had boxes for all sorts of injuries, once I left uni and got to working, I found that actually those boxes don't really work with humans. They do sometimes, to an extent, but us humans, we're so individual. We you know, we all in our day, we move differently, we eat differently, we sleep differently. All the things that are part of health, we're all so different. And then we obviously have our own genetics. So to box people and to box injury and recovery and movement so specifically, it really actually, I don't think helps people. I think actually it can be quite hindering. So when I see the Foot Nerd program and it's talking about how to embody health yourself and how to help guide others, but through their own reclaiming their own health, you know, that speaks volumes to me, and really met with the kind of ideas that I have for my clinic and for my clients, with how to really view their selves as individuals and how to help themselves in a larger spectrum to then deal with the smaller issues, such as an individual injury.
It's almost like, I mean, I have a kinesiology background, and it's almost like it's not like such a bad thing to initially learn by boxing and categorizing and making flowcharts, you know? Like I taught anatomy and physiology for incoming nursing students, and as we're learning something, it's good to like break things apart and look at them, but it's almost like that's just the very jumping off point, like the very most basic.
Yeah,
And then
absolutely.
and then what we didn't learn, it seems to me, is this thing that I think our Foot Nerd program does a great job, is like taking a foundation of, like crude information, like the boxes of like, this is how an Achilles injury looks, this is what you do. That's like that's like the very most basic foundation. But the art of then understanding the human, like you need to reintegrate that back into, that's one of the things I used to say about anatomy, is that like, yeah, once we learned all the systems and the organs and the tissues, and it's so much, and then you have to then reintegrate that and then come back to like the little mysteries and artfulness about how to care for a human body. um, and so as you were speaking, I was thinking like, oh yeah, what we learned at uni is like the basics.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's almost like you're trying to create, as I learn and evolve as a therapist and as a human, it's really, for me, the health line is about creating these layers on top of that, and helping these layers to kind of come together. A bit like you said, artfulness. It's almost like trying to bring lots of brush strokes together to create a really cool picture of like what we hope optimal health and recovery will look like. And
Mm-hmm.
each person's art will be different.
Mm-hmm.
Does that
Yeah,
make
it's
sense?
perfect sense. Yeah. So, so, so as you're going through the program and you're learning more, and you're like, how does your practice, is it looking different, or like
Yeah,
how do you?
it's starting to evolve a bit. Yeah, absolutely. How I might approach things might be slightly different. And we obviously, the reading list we get is great. Like, I love that about the program. It's like you don't have to read all this stuff, but we suggest you look at these things. These are really good tools. And some of actually the books that I have read through the program, I probably wouldn't have picked up myself.
Mhm.
Um, or might have read a few pages and thought, oh, I'm not sure this is my vibe. But actually, what I've learned to do is really some of the books I've listened to as podcasts, I've downloaded and listened to as podcasts, because I really enjoy to mesh together my learning with like walking outside and getting fresh air and trying to combine so that you can utilize your time well. And some of them I've read as books, but whether I'm listening or reading, I find that it actually, these kind of books with really good information and different ideas about health and your journey of health, it's really good to kind of read a little bit and then take the time to reflect and kind of um, let it marinate, almost, the
Mhm.
information.
Mhm.
Just let it, sit with you for a while, and then go back to it, take a little bit more on. So actually, for me, although like you were talking about in the introduction, it's like a year-long health journey. I'm not sure. I feel like for me it will be a year. I feel like I would just be on the journey,
Yeah. Yeah.
and it would just keep going, keep
Yeah.
growing.
Well, it seems like I've been involved with the program and helping and behind the scenes for a year, and it evolves very quickly, because I think as humans we're evolving very, like the program, our health has to evolve as we evolve as humans. And
Yeah,
I think that's something that is really important to recognize, is that as the world changed, so will we change. So as technology shifts, like our health requirements are going to change. Like I find that just in the last year, with being in the middle of a pandemic and all the stressors, and then like how much I'm engaging with technology, I need 10 hours of sleep, whereas before I could feel very well rested on 8 hours of sleep. But I think
I totally agree
just
with you with that, because we had a time here in the UK where we couldn't see clients face to face. We had to only do virtual. And actually the shift from, I might have seen 6, 8 clients in a day, which is tiring, and be, sharing knowledge, helping them, you know, conversating for a long period. But then when we when we transitioned to the online, it was the same amount of time, but it seemed to be so much more concentrated. And that constant staring at a screen, like people who do that every day, kudos. I couldn't. It was so difficult. It was a tough time.
Yeah, and you're learning. I mean, we're learning. So you're just like you were saying before. Like humans are not. We're so diverse and so unique from person to person. Then you take into consideration how much we've had to adapt to in the last year, how much learning takes place. So I think that the thing, I don't know about you, but the thing I have really appreciated about being together on this journey in the Foot Nerd program is about how we're consistently being reminding each other about how important it is to continue staying curious and monitoring what's happening. I think embodying our own health. I want to talk to you about this personally too, because embodying my own health, I guess I realized that my brain feels like it's always on fire trying to learn technology, but I was very resistant, to coming onto the Zoom and doing all these things online. I'm very much an in-person, hug me and hold me all the time.
Me too. And I'm really like that. Like one of the hardest things, you can think about all of the things that happened in the past year, all of the changes we've had to make, how COVID has affected everyone. And I'm not lying. The hardest bit for me is if you see somebody to talk to and you're in the street and you're stood like you're 2 meters apart. Whenever you have whenever I have a conversation with anyone that I like and I want to see, when I go, I'm always in for the hug. And now you kind of have to do this awkward, okay then, and then just walk away.
Yeah.
And it feels so not as I would be wanting to do things.
Yeah.
So I really there's a lot been going on, but not being able to just a friendly touch or squeeze, I just find that very difficult.
Yeah, and so I guess we're in this deep learning phase on I'm certain that we will come out of it okay, especially if you're committed to taking care of your own self, right? So like I was saying, I realize I need more sleep. I definitely need more downtime and outdoor time to process everything that we're going through. But so for you, so what have you personally been physically doing with 5 pillars of health? How has your life changed in the last year?
So the big thing for me is I've really changed my approach to food. It's been massive. I've transitioned from eating meat and fish to now only vegetarian. I did a lot of reading before I made that decision. I feel like to change your diet quite drastically, you need to ensure that you're understanding what choices you're making and that they are the healthiest for you. There's a lot of controversial, conflicting opinions on shouldn't we eat meat? Shouldn't we eat fish? Can we be healthy as a vegetarian or a vegan? And part of my choice to change was for my health, but part of my choice to change was for the ecosystem and for the planet. But in turn, I feel that the situation with the planet really concerns me. I find it really we talk about mindful and part of your health is your perspective and your health of the mind. And actually, I find that the situation with Earth and how things are changing and how can we help with that, even by making small changes as an individual, that was part of a real driver for me to change my perspective on food. So I've made that's been a big change for me, and I've been working with my own bodies, and I'm trying to be really listening to myself with it, because I'm an athlete. I work out six times a week at least. I run, I swim, cycle to work every day. I train for my netball, I do strength training. So fuel is really important. How I eat pre-activity and post-activity is really important, and to make that big change and make sure that I was still fueling enough and fueling correctly, getting my protein, those kind of things, all of the nutrients, that had to be a considered choice. So I've been listening and just picking out bits and bobs that I need to change to make sure that I stay in a really healthy zone. And actually that's been quite a journey. It's been quite a lot of reading and chefing and making sure that I'm aware of what I need and when I need it. And I think if anybody does make that change, it shouldn't. If you go from taking out your meat and then replacing it with just a lot of white carb type response, that's not going to be any good for you. It really needs to be a considered change. And actually, what's been really fun is using and eating loads of vegetables and fruits and herbs that I might not have had before.
What's your newest one that you've tried that you haven't had before?
What's been the newest one? It's probably the fruits, things like star fruit.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, they're interesting, and using your fruits and vegetables in ways that you wouldn't have used them before. So making your own sauces, making your own pestos, and actually cooking for everything pretty much from scratch to make sure that they don't have lots of sugar, lots of salt, things that keep them preserved. I'd rather cook fresh and eat immediately, which actually lots more herbs and spices as well.
Yeah.
Like turmeric.
Yeah.
Yeah, all the little spices. I've eaten a lot more curried type things, but it kind of destroys the takeaway element for me, because we used to love a takeout curry, and now we make such great curries at home. A takeout curry is nowhere near as good.
I know, that's kind of like what we were talking about before we started, right? Is that I don't know if I finished saying what I was saying, is that whenever I go out to a restaurant, I'm almost like I'm pissy because it's usually never as good as what
And
we
your
eat
favorite.
at home. And then we pay, we pay so much. We recently went out for an omelet and we paid, $11 for an omelet, and it was so bad, Lorna. And before we would go out to the restaurant for the ambiance, and now it's like I can't even in good conscience go, because many of the restaurants are still using like takeout food, what's that called? Cutlery, like plates and
Yeah,
cups and stuff.
yeah.
We had a coffee, if you got a refill for a coffee, they brought you a whole new styrofoam cup. So I was just like, first of all, I paid, I don't mind paying for a good meal, but it's like I was left there and I thought I'm gonna just make my own stuff at home because it's so much more fun. It tastes way better. And then you were talking about the ecosystem. I can't help but to think that simplifying. I don't really have any. Everybody has to do what they need to do in the way of meat. For me personally, I'm always thinking like, what's the simplest, most elegant solution to going easy on the planet? And it's always like the least amount of refrigeration. So if I eat a lot of meat, I have to refrigerate it, and then I don't know where it's coming from half the time, 90% of the time, unless I slaughter it myself and I realize that I'm not actually really I shouldn't really be eating meat at all, in my personal opinion, because I don't think that I could actually harvest the meat in order to eat
This
it.
is a conversation actually I was having at the weekend. My partner and I went to the Peak District, which is a countryside area in England with lots of hills. People go walking. It's beautiful. And we were walking, and it's lambing season, so the fields are full of sheep and lambs, and they're these cute little lammies, and they're like hopping around. And I was like, oh, look at these baby sheeps. And he's like, oh yeah, they're really cute. And I was like, could you kill that to eat that later? And he was like, well, no. And I was like, then should you be eating that later? Because like obviously lamb is on the menu everywhere at the moment because it's spring lamb time. But like if you genuinely couldn't kill it yourself, should you be eating it? It's kind of my question.
Yeah. And I think that's a personal question that I've had to ask myself. Like I don't have I have participated in the act of harvesting, a boar before. Like I helped to skin it. I just wanted to see like if I could do it. And then that was many years ago, but I do think that those are like personal questions that we need to just like ask ourselves. And then on top of that, I just think I am at this point in my life where I want to do, like, I don't want to put so much garbage in the landfill. Phil, if I start to think about how much garbage between like diapers and I mean, like the list goes on and on. I just think, okay, well, what can I do? Just keep it simple, and it's usually the very, dried beans and fruits and vegetables that I can get locally sourced as much as possible.
Absolutely. This conversation is like one that we have here a lot. Like you go to the supermarket and you've got like broccolis, and then you've got broccolis wrapped in plastic. And you're like, why are these broccolis wrapped in plastic? Why can't you just have the broccoli on its own, like these other ones?
Mm-hmm.
And then there's like bananas, and then there's bananas in plastic bags. And you're like,
Yeah.
what? I don't understand why. Why are we adding this
Yeah.
just excess plastic everywhere?
Yeah, and I think it's important, I think the first step is asking questions. So embodying, like being self-aware. How is it that we can just be more self-aware as we go through our daily lives? Because what I notice is that the simpler my life gets, the more I stay close to my community and what it has to offer in the way of food and movement, the happier I am. And I think that's the correlation that I'm making. Like when I'm taking off, like how we talk about like health is a lot about subtraction rather than additive. Like what
Absolutely.
what can you take out? And we said we weren't going to talk about food, and we've been talking about food.
And here we are talking about food. Just love food.
We can't help it.
No,
And then the
absolutely.
other thing is, I just love. We're talking about embodying health and the idea that working with individuals is very artful. Well, I think the same about food. When I look at my plate and it's filled with all this gorgeous color, like I can't. My brain is so happy to see all that color, and it tastes. There's so many varying flavors, and it's amazing. I mean, we did that chimichurri with Brighton, which is
Yeah,
like we did those kebabs. So what I did was when we did that Zoom cook along, for those of you that are listening, we in the Foot Nerd program, we've been doing these cooking classes together where one person will teach us and we'll all cook together. And the last one we did this chimichurri sauce for dipping, but it had like spearmint and parsley and garlic and onions and lemon juice and olive oil. Oh my gosh, you would have loved it, Lorna. And
oh,
then, but I've
yeah.
taken that. So initially it was like 4 kebabs, but I just have been making that as a salad dressing. And I've been slicing cabbage and peppers and carrots. And then I put tons of nuts on there, like
Oh,
pumpkin
yeah,
seeds
absolutely.
and walnuts.
Nuts are so good, like your protein, healthy fats, like, oh, so good. Like
Yeah.
every morning on my breakfast is like a handful of walnuts and then like some flax seeds and some chia seeds to just get all that goodness.
Yeah, so good. So,
Mm.
yeah. So anyway, okay. So let's transition to talking about what you wanted to talk about, which I thought was fascinating. So we thought that we would focus on the mind pillar today. And when I asked Lorna what she wanted to talk about, she wanted to discuss. Correct me if I'm wrong, but the 21st century, how we as humans surgery with regards to surgery, how we approach surgery, how our health professionals deal with the surgeries and the relationship to our bodies and how we speak to our bodies, how our doctors help us. Is that right? Is that what we're talking
Yeah,
about?
so basically I try to think about like when I'm working with my clients about health and helping them on their journeys, like what are the real sticky points? Like what are the things that time and time again, you know, have been difficult for people and feel like they're a challenge? And actually, one of the things that I think like I really want to put out there is that how communication sensitive we are is actually really important. And I
Mhm.
don't mean that in a like good bedside manner way. Like everybody wants to have a good bedside manner, have a good connection with their clients. I think it's really important to build up a good relationship, working to help people to like embrace their recoveries and their like surgical, whether it's surgical recovery or just general recovery. But actually, how and what we say, I think, is actually imperative in the journey of someone on recovery. And I talk about this all the time about being what I call communication sensitive. Like, so for example, I work a lot with ACL reconstruction surgery recovery. So that's a ligament in your knee.
I've had one.
Oh, you've had one. There you go. Still no. So a pretty life-changing injury, in my opinion. It's, you know, a painful injury to sustain. It's quite debilitating while you're waiting for surgery. And really, some people choose not to have surgical intervention, but it's just one of those ligaments you can't really, if you're happy to kind of live a straight line life, is what I kind of call it, then you probably can live without a non-dynamic straight line life. You can probably live without an ACL. But if you want to be active, if you want to move in 3 planes of motion, which we kind of should, because that's what we have the ability to do with our bodies. And if you want to be active and not worry, you really need that reconstruction, in my opinion, within the knee. And then once you have the reconstruction, it is a long journey for recovery. And it's a painful journey for recovery. Did you find that?
Yeah, well, I had my ACL reconstruction in 2005. This is interesting. We're talking about, I like how you're talking about communication sensitivity, because I played basketball in college, and I taught I was a strength and conditioning coach, and I taught PE, and I was playing basketball with my students when I tore my ACL. But I didn't, and all the doctor, and so I had the doctor who worked on the knees for the Lakers, the Los Angeles Lakers, professional basketball team, did my knee surgery.
Wow.
But it was so, I say this all the time because I had never had a surgery before, and he was just like, this is a routine surgery. It's no problem, routine surgery. And then it wasn't until last year when I did the digital seminar with the Foot Nerd program, I mean the Foot Collective, that my knee I started to actually trust my knee. So from 2005, and when you're a person who loves to like move in the 3 planes like you're talking about, and do and play, I never trusted the knee. The therapist was fine, but it was like insurance rehab, and I wasn't invested in it because I didn't really understand what was happening. I knew,
like you wouldn't believe how many people have a surgery. They don't really know what their surgery is. Like in my mind, it's kind of crazy. Like, you're going to let someone who you don't know, have no build-up relationship of trust with, put you to sleep, probably, chop into you, move some stuff around, stitch you up again, send you on your way without really knowing what that is. Like, I find that, like, that blows my mind. I've never had a surgery, touch wood, but when I see my surgical clients, I'm like, how can you not know? Like, I think if I injure myself, whatever I injured, if it was something I didn't know about, the first thing I'd be is like, right, what is it that I've actually done? How does this surgery work? Like, what's going to be the journey afterwards? People don't seem to, like, there's so much trust, this kind of unquestionable trust in a level of learning. So they are a surgeon, a professional in their area. This is what they tell me, well, they're a professional surgeon, they know what they're doing, but they're only just people, and some people learn better and some people don't learn as well. And some people will do surgery, they'll do the same surgery over and over again, but they'll never try to develop their skills or grow. So like, I just think we kind of like give a lot of trust to the label or the name of something. They're a consultant, they must be good, but that's your body. You're giving it so willingly without really understanding the process. So that always goes.
Yeah, and so I mean, like, this is crazy because I was actually in the health industry, and I still have been conditioned my whole life. At that point, it was in 2005, I just was part of the regular, you go to the doctor, they wear the white coat, so you're
Yeah.
trained to trust, you're trained to give. I mean, that's the whole point of why we're doing what we're doing, is reclaiming responsibility for our own health. So that you don't automatically, it's not that we don't trust our healthcare professionals, it's that we actually invest, engage, and are present learning about our own bodies and then
The question
creating.
is always about questioning, like ask the
Yes,
question.
exactly.
So, yeah, so the journey after surgery is a painful one, and you're trying to regain movement that you don't have. And so for a lot of my clients with the ACL reconstruction, they've said to me, the hardest thing is to be able to bend your knee again, like fully bend your knee again. You know, get that heel to your bum, deep flexion. It's tough. Post surgery, it's really tough. And it's hard and it hurts and it's monotonous. That kind of keep trying to do this thing that's really difficult. It's monotonous, and people find that difficult. And so when a surgeon says, and I know many different people who've been on a similar journey, oh, you probably won't get full knee flexion back, don't worry about it. So that kind of sentence, you know, it's almost throwaway, and it's almost like they probably feel like they're helping the patient by saying, oh, you know, don't get stressed about it. It doesn't matter. And to an extent, like I understand that perspective, but by saying that, people are like, oh, well, if I'm not going to get full knee flexion back, then I don't need to try. Like it almost facilitates, because it's such an effort to get that back. It's such a painful process to get that back. And then if someone says to you that you trust and you hold in high stead about what their opinions are, and that they're, you know, people think they speak the truth, then they'll take that truth and they will be like, oh, well, I won't try then. Like, I probably won't get it anyway. So what's the point? But actually regaining that knee flexion for me is like recovery 101. You want to not get injured again. You want to go back to your sport at, you know, a similar level, you know, return to the profession if you're professional. You know, you've got to go for every range of movement effort, every activation of muscle, every proprioceptive piece of information you can get. And that deep flexion is super important, super. And then, you know, on top of that, just on that line, there's like a second edge to that for me, because especially for women, as women, we don't think long term, we often think shorter term. So especially in recovery, and we're sports people, we're like, we just want to get back to sport. It's what it's all about. And especially for my younger clients, you know, they're not thinking about later life yet. They're just thinking about getting on their sport and feeling better. But for women, you know, later in life, if you are thinking about having a child, having your full knee flexion is essential, because a lot of people will have their child on mats on the floor and play with their child on the floor. And if you can't kneel and sit back on your heels because you've lost that knee flexion, you will struggle with that first kind of year of the baby, because it's a lot of floor work. And so people end up in this position where they have their recovery knee, because they can't sit on their heels and bend it. They have it up at like that 90-degree position, so like in a stride, and then one knee's on the floor. Do you know what I mean? Like kneeling on one, and then trying to then they're like, there's a lot more back work, a lot more curved back positioning, lifting from that position, a lot more rotating. And actually I have found several clients of mine who came to me later, and I didn't deal with their recoveries for ACL, but they've come to see me about back issues. We can track that back, and we can see that back issue came from their inability to kneel properly and sit back on their heels. And then all of this work on the floor with their child is too much stress on the back that we shouldn't really be in those positions to deal with. So you don't regain that good knee flexion, you know, going down the line, there can be lots of actual other issues the body can get that we can track back to that. So for someone then so back into the conversation about communication sensitivity, it's really important that we use these positive terms. Yes, they might not get full knee flexion back. That does happen. But for me, I think it's key to say to people, knee flexion is important. Let's work to see how far we can get that, because the more we can gain, the more effective that will be for you. I'm not saying you'll get it, but I'm trying to give those positive vibes and communication points, rather than ones that they grab onto the negative and then don't make the effort. Does that make sense?
Yeah, it makes perfect sense. I mean, absolutely, especially because so to go back to what the doctor said about being a routine surgery, it's routine for the surgeon who does the surgery
all day long.
And so when you're talking about then going to rehab it sounds like the rehab, or the people that you work with, you're a lot more invested and caring. And detail oriented, whereas like I think in my rehab you can feel like that you're a little bit of, it's like a cattle, you're being like cattle just pushed through, because the only thing that they needed to do to sign me off to say that my rehab was finished was that I had a certain range of knee flexion. I think it maybe was heel to butt, but then it was over. Well, my body was, it felt so weird, like from right to left, it was like I was two different people. And I just kind of gave in and said, I'm never going to be able to play sport again. So it was like many years before I could even like think of, I think I got a little depressed. Like we don't really address that, the mental health after surgery, even like in a routine surgery. We don't talk about like, you don't ever have that conversation with anybody about like, how are you actually feeling about, I mean, obviously there's not enough time and you're not able to.
Yeah, because, you know, not only has someone hurt themselves, had a surgery that's changed them, like I always say to people, like, I really want to get back to, and I'm like, you're not going to get back to it. Look forward, because your knee is forever changed. Like once you've had surgery, you are forever surgically changed. So to try and get back to somewhere is almost like an unattainable goal. You want to look forward to getting somewhere new, which actually can be better if you work really hard. And so to where were we? Just lost my train of thought there.
No, that was a very, I actually really like the way that you're talking about that. We don't say that enough about like going forward, moving forward, not backwards. I'm not trying to get back to the way things were, but to go to move forward and recognize like what's happening in your body right now, because things have changed after a surgery, and you're going to have to understand your body on a new level. I mean, that's something I realize that I'm still kind of working with, because it seems like the ligament on the left side, which is where I had the surgery, is stronger and a little bit more taut.
It depends what kind of surgery. There's different types of they create you a new ligament effectively, but they use tendon tissue. It depends what kind of tendon tissue they took for you, because there are different choices, and it's usually surgical preference. But that tendon tissue actually, they don't even really like talk to you about, like, again, about the communication points. They're like, yeah, we've made you a new ACL, do your rehab, get out there, get going. Actually, even to appreciate within yourself that the tissue that is now there is not actually quite the same, because ligament tissue makeup is slightly different to tendon tissue makeup. So you already have different tissue trying to do the same job. And then on top of that, it isn't, you've grown your own ACL from bone to bone, but we haven't grown our tendon ACL that we've replaced. We've replaced it, and we've mechanically attached it with screws and fixers. So that's not actually the same either. Around that, depending on which tendon they took, you will have lost some muscle activation because they've taken it from a muscle, or you have scar tissue within a muscle, depending on what they took. So now you've got all these different little bits around your knee that are changed, forever changed, like we said. So if people don't understand that, the chances of them being gentle with their recovery and carefully caring for their surgically recovering knee, they're going to be quite low, because, if they're told this is routine, you'll be all right, and then, they just don't get much information, how would they ever understand it? So, a lot of the time within the clinic, we, as well as using positive vocal and getting people to look forward and to try to appreciate that their change should be positive and to grow within that change, we try as much as we can to educate within the realms of our knowledge about understanding their body and understanding what the process they've been through is, quite in depth, really, so that they can, like, I use the word respect, but it is that, like, I feel like we get one body, it does, like, the body is crazy, it does all these things all at the same time every day, like breathing and blood moving and nutrition and bladder growing and all these crazy things that it does, and it's an amazing piece of equipment that we're given. So when we do damage it, if we can understand how we've damaged it and how we've helped it in, like, whether it's surgical or without, and then care for it and be kind to it in that recovery, and allow it the opportunity to optimally recover and then help to build and grow it with good health and all the pillars we talk about, then your opportunity to then achieve everything you want to achieve, and don't have any, you'll never get this, or you can't have this again, or you'll probably get re-injured here, or whatever. We can avoid all those things by just really embracing ourselves, but just in a really slow way. And I think that only comes from really understanding, like, what's been happening to you.
So when you were working with people in your clinic, how, like, what would be, so what do people do? Like, how do people that you see on a regular basis sort of treat their bodies? Like, we're talking about having respect and reverence for the one body that we've been assigned, and you get it, for so long as you're living. And I think we forget that it's how you would treat something that you really care for, but like times infinity and beyond. So how do the people that you see treat their bodies? Like, what's your observation? And then, like, how would you advise people to shift their focus?
I mean, it's a real mix. Like, obviously, like, we all know that there are many different spectrums to how people look after themselves or don't, and how much people recognize that their body is this amazing piece of equipment that they get to use every day. So, and we do get a real range, and some people will come in and we're on a bit more of a journey with them, and then some people come in and actually they're already in a really good space, and it's just like a bit more refinement for those people. But I think the most important thing is that it comes without judgment and without criticism, but only, like, comes from a place of care, that we help them to start a journey from wherever they walk through our door at. And yeah, like, I feel like, and I also feel like it's to try and with us, I always say to my girls that work for me, like, getting to know your client, and I don't mean getting to know their injury, but getting to know your client is super essential to be able to help them on the journey best way they can. Because a bit like the boxes for the body, you can't box a human and the way their life, if we can understand the demands of their life, whether that's family, job, travel, health barriers, if we can understand where they're currently sitting when they come into us, then we can help to give them optimal guidance based on what we know they'll probably be able to achieve, fit into their time. Because it'd be great if we could all just drop everything and be like, right, what do I need to do to be super healthy? But like Ruth, like, even with the Foot Nerd program, there's a lot of things that I could change, but trying to change everything at one time means you'll probably benefit minimally and change nothing much.
Exactly.
So those little stepping stones, like, start somewhere, do something small, and then layer that up. So we can understand our clients well with communicating with them, and we can understand their lifestyle, what they care for, what drives them. Then we can try to tailor that these little pieces of information and these little guiding steps to a better health journey and recovery slowly, and to them.
So I have a question for you. Do you own your own clinic?
Yeah.
Okay, this is fascinating. So it's you and how many other people in your clinic?
So it's me, and I have two other girls that work for me at the moment. Myself and my colleague Becky, we are sports therapists. We do injury rehab, and we do the movement therapy, and we just do the general health journeys. And then we have Megan, who's a sports massage therapist. So she does all our sports massage, and she's currently studying to become a sports therapist as well.
So a sports therapist in the UK, is that the same as a physio or a physical therapist?
But we're trained muscular. So we do the same as musculoskeletal training as a physiotherapist, and then that's topped with understanding of sport-specific conditions, those kind of sport boxes.
So with that being said, it sounds like you're taking a different approach to your clients' rehab. And my question is, so you're talking about really getting to know each person. So like we had this great panel discussion last week on evolving rehab. And I'm curious, a lot of the physical therapists, the physios and sports therapists talk about how there is so little time when you're working in a big institution. And the idea is to move people through very quickly. But if you have your own clinic, do you spend more time? Is the intake form different? How do you address that?
Yeah, so I feel privileged that we have built up through our work a really we have a really good client base. We have a good reputation. We don't do any advertisement. Our clients come solely on referral, privately. So I feel really privileged that we've got to that point, because it does mean that we can kind of make our rules and we can stick to our rules about how we do things. And I'm a firm believer in like making sure that people want to recover quickly, and they want to recover to get back to things, and quick fixes in today's society, it's what it's all about. We can have everything's to hand. Like, you want some information, you pick up your phone, you Google it. Like, everything's so quick, and people want that for their bodies too. But actually, what we try to explain is it's the one thing that there is no quick fix. You have to, if you want it to work for the longevity, you have to put the time in. But we're very honest. People phone us to schedule in, and the conversation is always the same. We are here to guide you. We will not be fixing you. We are here to help you find direction for your recovery, understand your body better, and to move well. And it is all about the movement and the effort that you want to put into it. We are not couch-based therapists. We do some couch work, but our couch work is to support and to enhance the movement work that people are doing. So if we can push them. So when I say couch work, I mean we do hands-on work, so massage, fascial release, mobilizations. We do those things, but I don't want people to come, get on the couch, be treated, feel a bit better for a while, then feel a bit worse, then come back, have another treatment, and then they stay my client because they need me to treat them so they can feel at least better for a month before they need me again. Like, that's no way. For me, that's no way to progress somebody. So we always tell them, you'll need to be putting the work in. If you're not the kind of, if you're not feeling the vibe of doing work for yourself, we're probably not the therapist for you. Like, we're brutal. We say that to people, like, don't book with us if you don't want to do your own work, because we won't have people come every week and just put them on the couch. I'm not doing them any justice by taking their money for that. So we won't. So we're really privileged that we can say, come here if you want to do this. So we tell everyone the same, and everyone has the same. Their first appointment, no matter what they want, no matter what injury they've got, no matter what their pain is, or if they just want to move better, to perform better in sport, it's a 2-hour full assessment. We assess their joint positioning, we assess their joint ranges of motion, and we go through their health at the present time. We go through their injury history, their goals for coming to see us, and we get to know them, and we get to know what they're about and what they're looking for. And then we can build them a really individualized program based on top of that information. And then going forward, there's no structure. It's not like you've got to book 5 sessions or anything like that. We do the first session, we go away, people go home with some new movement to do, something that will help them along the way. And we say, go and do this, feel your body, see how it reacts, and then depending on the layers of injury history and how many pains we're treating or how many recovery issues we're treating, that then dictates kind of when we need to see them next and how we'll do going forward. But it's a really fluid process, and no 2 clients are treated the same or given the same sheet of generic exercise. It really is based on them. And actually, what we've worked really hard on at the clinic is to be able to kind of see the human help them to see parts that need to be developed to support the injury itself. So it might be like ACL rehab, for instance, that we talked about earlier, as a knee. So we might give them things for that baseline week 1, week 2 after surgery. But we might also look up the chain and be like, well, actually, they have a torso tip on top of that knee, which means that that knee has always got more load on it anyway. Well, when they go back to sport, we don't want the recovery knee to have more load. So let's start working up the chain, getting that torso tip back to neutral or center, like in the middle, and that unload that knee while that knee's in recovery. So we try to like layer it and really tailor it to the client. And like we talked about earlier, the mental side of things as well. That's where I lost my chain. When you're in recovery, like, you're not only are you in pain and had surgery, but you're not able to do the thing. Like, sport for a lot of people, activity for a lot of people, is their like stress reliever, their thing they love to do, and then that's gone too. Like, that's so much pressure, so a lot to deal with. So we try to really talk through with our clients, you know, like, what are you missing? What can we give to you to do? How can you get your stress relief? Not quite where you want to be, but where are the stepping stones to at least get you back in a really good, positive position?
So you're getting them involved in their own, making their choices for themselves, and you essentially, what you're saying is you're empowering them to take responsibility for their own rehab, and you're there to guide them along the way. How many people do you see a day, would you say, in an 8-hour period?
That really depends on like how many new people we've got and stuff, but on a general day, I'll probably averagely see 6. On a really busy day, maybe 8. And then if I've got a few new people, I might only see 2 or 3, because it's all about the time that we need to give. But yeah, we are invested for sure.
Yeah, that's wonderful. And so let's we're coming up on, I can't believe it's already been an hour.
I know.
We're coming up, we want to wrap it up, and I want to bring it back to, like, how does this communication sensitivity fit into the mindfulness pillar? And like, what would you, if you had the attention of the whole entire world, Lorna,
Yeah.
what
If I was
would
gone
you,
for a day.
yes, what would you like, what guidance would you give to every person in order to, you know,
I think
have
the thing
some,
I'd probably say the most, like, you know, there's things you say a lot to your clients, like the thing I probably say the most is clear your mind of where you've been. Because up to the point of injury, there are some injuries that are just fluke. Like, somebody puts something in your way, you trip over it. Like, that's just one of those things. But generally, a lot of injury comes from where you've been. So if you're trying to get back to somewhere that created your injury, why would you want to go back there? Yes, it felt good until you were injured, but it took you to the injury. So I always think, like, clear your mind of where you've been, look forward. Know where you are now. Like, well, no one can go back anyway. Like, I always say to my clients, unless you've got a time machine I'm not knowing about, we can't get back anyway. So look forward, clear your mind of where you've been, think about where you want to go, how you want to get there, what time you think that you can give to get in there, and start small. But always know that there will always be somewhere better than where you are right now, if you're willing to work at it. And even like when we start that journey, it's like, I see it as like a forest with many paths. They're all interconnecting somewhere down the line, but we try to take the path that we think will be best for our client based on all of that information we've collected from them in their first appointment. But I'm like, be honest with me. If you come back and I say to you, how do you feel? How do you feel like the things we gave you to do have helped or not? Like, don't just think she's really nice and she's trying, so I just say, yeah, it's okay, it's, you know, it's getting better. I'm like, don't tell me that. If you don't think that the things that we've given you are taking you on the path to the goal, say to me, do you know what, Lorna, actually, I really appreciate your help. Actually, that just doesn't feel like it's doing the thing I need it to do. So I know, and I can be like, well, let's just take a different path then, because there's no point trying to push the same journey if the journey isn't creating the benefits that they want and the goals they want going forward. So that communication and that openness and that honesty for me is essential to guide them through the winding path to the goals.
Mm-hmm.
So
But it
I think
also
it's that looking forward and trying to see where you want to be and how you want to guide yourself there, and understand that there are going to be bumps in the road and there will be twists and turns that you're probably not, you're not going to foresee, but work with that and try and flow with it, because if you flow with things and you're honest and you keep that open communication, and we can find the way through. We'll always find the way through.
it requires an actual engagement in the relationship, a give and take, right? Because if I look back on how I approached my rehab, I did very little of what was required of me at home, because I think I was depressed and it hurt, and I didn't I didn't know like what the heck was going on. So that when I went to rehab, I hadn't done really what was required of me to make the progress, but I just showed up at the appointment anyway because, there was going to be somebody who knew better than me. And then, so what you're asking is, it actually is harder because it requires a person to do the work themselves, or, and then,
and
kind
if
of,
you had been my client, Ruth, I would have, especially like that very first meet, I'd have been like, this is going to be brutal. It's going to be so tough. It's going to be so painful, and you're going to hate it. But you're going to need to do it, because if you come back here to me at whatever date we choose, and you don't do it, then you're not going to get any progress, and that's going to feel even worse. And also, you're probably not going to be able to do the things that I want you to do at the next appointment, and then that's going to hurt you more. So this is why, these are the things I want you to do. This is how you do it. This is what's happened to you. And I really would try to really encourage you through information and informative conversation to really go for your life with it at home. And that's what I do now.
And those little tiny successes that people would make if they actually did, like you're talking about, go slow, erase where you've been, we're moving forward now. And the biggest goal is that you make those tiny increments that make you feel successful, and then you feel empowered so that you are able to reclaim responsibility for moving your body.
And it is those small wins. And when they start to see the small wins, and we try to do lots of video capture and what I call objective markers, so little things that get people to do that I know they probably won't achieve, but so that later on, maybe 3 or 4 sessions down the line, I can make them do it again and go, do you remember when you couldn't do that? And they're like, oh my God, yeah. And so those little pieces are really good.
Oh yeah,
to help.
that's great. Yeah, that's great, because you're there to be a mirror for their successes and give them guidance, and then they can take those pieces and put them to use. Yeah, that's really good. I like that. I like the idea of just erasing where you've been. You could use that across every part of your life,
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And it doesn't mean forget it. It develops and informs the person you are. But often people are like, I wish I could go back. I wish I could go back. We just can't. The energy that we put into thinking about that, that energy could be going somewhere else really beneficial.
Yeah. Do you think that there is some, when people are so stuck in that I want to go back, do you think there's some value in giving supporting a person to kind of grieve? Because that's one area where we talk about communication sensitivity, that you don't actually get to grieve the loss of whatever it was that you
have
loved.
Yeah, absolutely. Somebody might not be doing the thing they love.
Yeah,
and I think,
and we don't talk about the grieving process, that I think humans have, I think we just are we want to feel better and we want to move forward. But I think there is some value, a lot of value actually, in just taking some time to just grieve that things are not the way that they were, or that the way that you expected them to be. And then having some tools to be it's okay to be bummed, just let yourself be bummed for a while. And then let's move forward little by little. We don't ever
Absolutely.
really tell.
We call that throwing ourselves a pity party.
Yeah, you need a pity party.
It's
I
cool
love
to have a
that.
pity party. Throw yourself one. Like, get into it, but like, give it a deadline.
Oh, you mean you literally throw a pity party?
Yeah, we throw ourselves a little pity party. Like, feeling down, I'm gonna mooch a bit. I might watch some films. I might not do anything today. I might just lay on the sofa and be a bit miserable. But like, give yourself a deadline.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
And then once that deadline's over, get back on it.
There's a woman, she wrote a book called Learning to Walk in the Dark. I forget what her name is right now, but the book is amazing. And it talks about how it talks about religion a bit. I think she was in some religious order and left her church, but she talks about how humans are obsessed with like the bright light, like being like a lighter, happier person, and light. And she was saying like it's really important to have like risk tolerance, or to be able to like have a safe way to feel the dangers of life. Like when you were a kid and your parents were upstairs, but they sent you down into the basement to get the jelly, and it was scary down there, but you had to like know that it was safe, but you had to like take some risks and go
Yes.
into these dark places. And I think, and then so she talks about how giving yourself 30 minutes of melancholy every day, like give yourself essentially like a 30-minute pity party where you just are able to fuss and grief and like say what
Yeah.
it is that it's
Rant
upsetting.
out if you need to, like, get it all out. But then
Yeah.
crack on.
And then give yourself a deadline. But
It's
like I
really,
thought, yeah, I never thought about that before. And I still, even though I've read the book and refer to it many times, I don't do that. I don't give myself 30 minutes a day, because sometimes I'm like, it'll never end if I do it. But you have to trust that you can feel that
thing is,
and then go back.
some days you might not feel like I need 30 minutes, but some days you might feel like you really do need 30 minutes.
Mm-hmm.
So take it, yeah. Like I always, and sometimes in rehab and at the clinic, some people will cry. And they'll be like, oh my God, I'm really sorry. Like, don't be sorry. You carry on crying. Like, get it out. It doesn't matter. Like, whatever you need to get there, like, to do the thing.
Mm-hmm.
There are no rules. They're like, there's no boxes. There's no rules to this.
Mm-hmm.
We're only humans trying to do our best. And when we're hurting or we're injured, like, that's surprising. We weren't prepared for that. There's no prep. In case I'm injured, I'm going to do all these things. Like, there's no prep for that.
Yeah, for sure.
Just allow yourself that to roll with it. Like, I'm
Yeah.
all about rolling with it.
Yeah, it's
Go
so
for
true.
feeling. Allow yourself a bit of space and time to breathe it out. Like, and if that means a cry, or if that means a rage, or like if that means like, yeah, a bit of melancholy, like, go for it. Like, just know that you just want to know that you're going to have an endpoint and you don't want to live in it.
Exactly right. Yeah, I really love that. It's like cleaning. You got to clean your insides, you got to do your internal hygiene, like cleaning
Absolutely.
out the rooms so that you can get on with it. I think that might be a good place for us to end. And I want to thank you so much, Lorna, because it's 10 o'clock.
Absolute pleasure. I mean, we could chat for hours, I'm pretty sure. We
I'm
just
pretty
go
sure. Let's do it again. What time do you go to bed normally?
It just depends what's happening the next day, depends what happened this morning, how I feel. I'll probably chill for a little bit, and I'll probably hit the sack about 11, I should imagine.
Oh, nice. And
So
then
yeah.
is it the same? So you're kind of intuitive. You don't have like a big structured
No,
schedule
I
around
will
sleep.
just go how I feel. Like, if I get home and it's 9 and I'm tired, then I'll go to bed. Like, I try not to fight it.
Yeah.
Like, I've got like my nephew, he's like 1. And kids, they get overtired, they try to fight it because they want to stay awake and they don't want to miss anything. And I'm like, we're a bit like that, as adults. Like, we pretend we're not children, but we're actually just big children. So
Totally.
we're like trying to fight it because we don't want to miss like something we want to watch on telly or whatever. But it's just like, I try to just go with the fear, like try to listen and be like, actually, I'm cool. Like, I can chill for a bit. Or, oh, this is not cool. Let's just like go and get some Z's. So yeah,
Yeah.
just really cool with it.
Well, I love it. And maybe we can do this again sometime, Lorna.
It's such a pleasure, Ruth.
Okay, well, I'm just going to close it out. Thank everybody for listening to us. And if you have questions about the Foot Nerd program, do not hesitate to contact us. And you can reach us at nerdhelperteam@gmail.com, or you can go check out our website at tfcfootnerd.com. So thanks again, Lorna, and we will talk to you again soon.
Bye.
Bye.